Okay, I think we have most people have already joined, so let's get underway. My name is Andrew Lampett. Thank you for joining. Uh, we're going to cover today ChatBridge from Zagil, which is about monitoring customer support's effectiveness. And I'll be presenting a few slides to offer an overview, and then Sanjeev Nath will be providing a demo. So first off, of course, the traditional safe harbor. There's going to be some forward mentioning information here, and especially with Q&A. So we just want to make sure the safe harbor is made aware to you all. First about Zagil and the corporate overview. The company has been around since 2006. We have hundreds of customers, a lot of big names, and as you can see right away, a lot of integration customers, in fact, even though Zagil is focusing on integration. Zagil is focusing on integration of products in a very specific reason. That's for cross-functional team alignment and a very deep integration with respect to workflows and processes and data. Not simply exchanging some data, but rather having intermingling of processes between one application and another for the purpose of serving cross-functional team requirements. Of course, our flagship product, Zagil Connect, is #1 rated on the Salesforce App Exchange for integrating Jira and Salesforce. And today's focus will be ChatBridge, integrating Salesforce and Slack as part of this 5-webinar series. So when we talk about monitoring support effectiveness and account health, what are we talking about? Well, it's all about from the perspective of from within Slack, because of course support teams are going to be working within Salesforce, Service Cloud. They're going to be, primarily there. But if you have a manager or an exec who wants to get some information or query information, they may or may not be within Salesforce. They're most likely always going to have Slack at their fingertips, and they're going to want to query information. So what we're talking about here is where ChatBridge uses Slack commands. And for those of you not aware, Slack commands are invoking this Slack capability to call information directly from an application via APIs. So Zagil has created some of these Slack commands for ChatBridge. There's 2 major categories here: querying customer information and then initiating conversations. And this is these concepts you're going to see in the demo. So querying customer related information that's within Salesforce. For example, how's a particular account doing? What's the status with respect to a complaint, or maybe the milestones that you're tracking against? And then how's the support team doing? So that could be just general reports, open cases by priority, and so forth. And then of course you can also initiate conversations. So the idea here is you could be in a channel, for example, a support channel, and you could actually query the question to an object, to a case, an account, or a user that's within Salesforce. Now, when we're talking about questions that need to be answered by a support manager or an exec, I'm not going to go through this long list. This is to kind of whet your appetite, to get you thinking about, this is the kind of information that, of course, is residing in Service Cloud. You want to have access to it. You probably have reports in Salesforce, but wouldn't it be great if you could just, in a few keystrokes, access this kind of information from within Slack? So these are reports that you probably already have created or you can create within Salesforce, and ChatBridge makes that accessible to you and to execs via Slack. So next, we're going to have the demo by Sanjeev. Sanjeev, may I hand this portion over to you?
Yep.
All right, I'll stop my sharing. And I can see your screen.
Great. Thank you, Andrew, and greetings, everyone. This is Sanjeev Nath. So as Andrew pointed out, for the demo scenarios today, we will focus on ways in which support managers and execs can use ChatBridge to access pertinent information from Salesforce in Slack channels. For example, information that is related to a case that has been escalated, as well as account associated with this case. That's something we will show in the demo today as part of our scenarios. And of course, there's also, as Andrew pointed out, the performance aspect of it. So you have reports in Salesforce that are specific to various types of performance that you want to measure. For example, open cases by rep, open cases by account. So we will also use those as examples to show you how you can retrieve these reports from Salesforce in Slack channels. So let me move on to the demo. So let's start first with looking at a case. So what we're going to start with is a scenario where there are notifications in Slack channels. So we have escalation channel that's set up. And this channel is receiving notifications for cases for which SLA is about to expire for first response. And in order to do that, what we've done is to define a simple escalation process in Salesforce that will send out notifications to Slack channels at 3 hours and at 2 hours and at 3 hours from when the case is opened if no response has been returned to the customer. So you can see here, for example, a case number reaching SLA expiration in 2 hours, And so we can start here because as a support manager, I might take a look at the Slack channel to see cases which are for which first response is, the SLA is expiring for first response. And there's a number of actions I can take. So let's start first with just retrieving some information about the account. Now for this, as Andrew had mentioned, we provide Slack commands. So /SF, for example, is a Slack command that ChatBridge provides. It's a generic command that allows you to do a number of actions from Slack in Salesforce. So what we're going to do here is to just look for an account because we want to retrieve some information about it. So Burlington Textiles is the account for which these cases are escalating. So let's first take a look at the account. So I just type in Burlington, and since it matches the text of the account name in Salesforce, it will retrieve me this one account. If there were a number of accounts that match this, then I would have seen those options, and then I can choose one of them. Now, in terms of actions then for this account, I have a number of different things I can look at. So I can send a message to this account, which will be posted in the feed for this account. I can just view the details, edit. I can link it to this particular channel. I can share it, which is basically pinning it to the Slack channel so others can also see this account information, or I can access the feeds for this account. So for now, I'm just going to view account information because, as I'm looking at the cases, I might first take a look at, in our scenario, some information about the account. So for example, I might want to see the contract or SLA information. I might want to look at some of the other cases to see what the status of various milestones is for this account. Now, what you're looking at here is a PDF that's actually generated based on a page layout. So the point here is that you can configure a page layout in Salesforce specific for this type of retrieval from Slack, so that page layout is customized, and it's basically providing whatever relevant information there may be for Slack users to take a look at the account information in the context of their query. So we're looking at this account and we just want to see what the status is of open cases for this account. And we may also look at some additional information about contract and SLA, as I mentioned. So that can be available very easily from within Slack channels. So that's the first part. And of course, if I need to share this with the channel, I can pin it so that others may also have access to it. And they can also, of course, retrieve it on their own, because this particular query that I just made is only visible to me. So that's where the share option comes into play. Now that I've seen this account information, I can also go and query something about the case. So for example, I'm looking at these cases that, where the SLA expiration is expiring and notification is provided. So what I can do is I can, for example, as I showed you earlier, I can query some information about the case. So for example, I might want to just look at the case feed to see if there's any activity associated with this case, more recent activity, for example. And so here, the case feed will be retrieved in Slack. Now, the idea behind feed, particularly if you have feed tracking enabled, is that it will show me all the activity that's happening related to the case, whether there's notifications that are being sent, when the case was created, if the case had been updated, for example. All of that information is there in the feed. It's just now accessible in Slack, okay? So I can take a look at the feed here, for example. Now, what I might want to do, for instance, is I might want to initiate a message to the case owner. So here I can actually create a thread, and I can also mention the case owner. So this is a simple way of creating both a conversation thread in Slack and at the same time engaging directly with the case within Salesforce itself, and also mentioning the owner, so that if notifications have been turned on in Salesforce, then you'll be able to see the owner will receive the message. Okay, so here, for example, I'll be able to see, for instance, let's see. I lost it somewhere. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one here. Sorry. So in case 1223, if you take a look at it, you will see the message that was received from Slack. So someone, as a support manager in Slack, I'm requesting a status, and that message is both sent to the case itself, but it's also then it's also alerted to the case owner. So, and the case owner can respond to this message. Whatever that message might be. So the point here is that it creates a conversation thread, okay? And you can see that this message is received here. And so if I look at the thread that I just started with, let's see, here's the message back from Salesforce. And so this case then, or this conversation then becomes threaded, meaning any exchange here will stay as part of this particular conversation in Slack. But also more importantly, it becomes part of this record, right? So it's not just the fact that we're sending a message to a particular user in Salesforce, but here you can see that it becomes part of the record, so that next time around someone's looking at the case, they can see this as part of any activity that has occurred on the case itself. And again, if I were to query the case feed from Slack, I will be able to see part of the message, part of the exchange that just occurred, okay? So for instance, now if I query the case feed, I should be able to see, in addition to what I saw earlier, some of the comments that have been added. And here you can see that. So here, this is the most recent activity related to this case that I'm able to access from within Slack channel with convenience. So those are some of the actions in terms of reaching out to the support agent and asking for information or offering information related to cases for which, as I said, the SLA is expiring on first response. And of course, as you saw earlier, you can also use these actions to retrieve more information about a case, for example. So I can look at the information. And again, just like what you saw with the account, you'll be able to see, for example, more information that is corresponding to a page template or page layout that you can configure in Salesforce specifically for this purpose. So here we have information about the case, milestones, some description, whatever it is that it would be valuable to us in Slack that we can access quickly. So that's the set of scenarios that we talked about in terms of basically focusing on specific alerts related to violations that may occur. Now, the other thing we also pointed out is related to performance reports. So we offer Slack commands. SF report is one that allows you to access reports from Salesforce within Slack. So here I can, for instance, type, case request report for a case. Let's say case, actually, I don't remember the report. So I'm just gonna type in case and it will give me all the reports that are available for cases or that match that. So I can say, I can request case status by rep. So here I will get that report available to me. So this is, again, for convenience, you can start to look at all the reports or access all the reports that are available in Salesforce, in Slack channels. And then again, as I said earlier, you can also make them, you can pin them to Slack channels if you want others to be able to access them as well. So the same thing, for example, I can request a report on case by account, for instance. Oops. So how about if I just do open cases by account. So this would be another one that I might want to take a look at because I want to know what's happening with a particular account. So this is similar to what we saw earlier, where we were just querying a particular account, but here we can also see, for example, what are all the accounts and what's the status of high priority cases that are still open. So this type of performance reports can be very valuable in terms of just being able to access them quickly and conveniently in Slack channels rather than going into Salesforce. And again, as I said, the focus here with these scenarios was to really show you how support managers and other execs can, in Slack channels, perform some of these actions, for convenience rather than having to access all this information by going to Salesforce. So I think on that note, I will turn back to you, Andrew.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sanjeev. So I'll just move us back over to one more slide to wrap up, and then we can take Q&A. Let's see there. There we go. So, in a summary, ChatBridge is, as you saw, allows you to monitor support team effectiveness. Sanjeev showed two main ways to do that. One was to query information directly about particular objects or people's efforts. And then, of course, you can look at the performance with respect to reports. And this is all about driving cross-functional team alignment, of course, between support and other teams. Primarily, it's going to be engineering, could be product management, perhaps some of the field, the go-to-market teams. So that wraps up this webinar. We're going to have Q&A. The questions are trickling in. Feel free to add your own right now. I'd like to give you a quick reminder that we have a few more webinars coming up. One more in December around increasing efficiencies with ChatBridge. And then in January, we'll have a couple more about how ChatBridge can help increase sales, and finally, how you can engage your community. So first question, Sanjeev, for you is, I see that you have queried reports with respect to support. Can you query other Salesforce objects, including custom objects?
Yeah, actually, any object that is chatter enabled can be integrated or accessed from Slack. So you can query, you can update, you can create, and all of these are configurable. So when you install this, you can actually, you will have to be deliberately configuring which objects are queryable in Slack, which can be created, which can be updated. And that includes Salesforce standard and custom objects.
Okay, great. Next question is, I tried some of this with an open source toolkit. It seems pretty sophisticated. Can you describe what's all required for installation, configuration, and have this capability that you showed?
Yeah, ChatBridge is very easy to install. It takes about maybe half an hour to install. It comprises of two components. So there's a Salesforce package and there's a Slack app that need to be installed. So you will need admin privileges on both sides. So either whomever has admin privilege in Slack and or Salesforce to be able to do the installation and configuration, they need to work together. But otherwise, it's a fairly straightforward installation. And also, I'll mention that the product is, fully featured. I mean, everything you see is out of the box. So it really only takes, half an hour to have it up and running.
Great. We have time for one more question, and if other questions are trickling in, don't worry. We'll be able to follow up with you by email regarding those as well. But last question, Sanjeev. Does it require a one-to-one user licensing for Slack and Salesforce users? So I guess they're asking, do you need to have all Slack users and all Salesforce users licensed
Well,
to use ChatBridge?
right. So from Slack, a single Salesforce account is used to authenticate Slack app to Salesforce. And Slack users do not need to have Salesforce license in order to access all the Salesforce information that we showed you in Slack. It's all configurable, meaning for any particular user in Slack, you can match them up to specific Salesforce profiles to control what they can or cannot access. But they do not need to have Salesforce license.
You don't have to have the Salesforce license. Okay. Very good. So that wraps it up for this webinar. Again, we hope we see you next time for December 16th or the ones in January. Feel free to share with your friends and colleagues. Thanks for your time. Goodbye.